Hey everybody, it's your human anatomy and physiology teacher, Mr. Poser. Today we're going to be going over the second part of our urinary system unit. I'd like to start off today a little bit by going over again the nephron and the different parts of the nephron and what happens in the anatomy of that again. Because it went kind of fast last time. So, like I said last time in this video, we're going to be talking about how urine is formed and then, of course, how it is eliminated. All right, so we're going to start here in the nephron where we left off last time. Again, we are inside the kidney here. There are a million of these in each one of your kidneys. So you have, 2 million because you have two kidneys, right? And the job of your kidneys, if you recall from last video, is to kind of filter out your blood a little bit and maintain fluid balance, right? So, and it does that by making sure it keeps what's necessary for your bodily fluids and then it gets rid of what's not necessary for your bodily fluids. And how it does that is by regulating blood, right? So here's your afferent arteriole. This is going to be one of the main vessels. Well, this is the vessel to each nephron that's going to be delivering blood so that it can be filtered out, right? And the glomerulus is this bundle of that afferent arteriole. It's like glomerulus, I'm pretty sure translates to ball of yarn. And something called glomerular pressure forms what's called the filtrate, okay? And the filtrate is collected in what's called the glomerular capsule. And thanks to some pressure here that's going to be applied from the glomerular filtrate, it's going to be pushed through first the proximal tubule, and again, we are in the renal cortex here. The proximal tubule, and it's going to descend into the renal medulla through the nephron loop. And two processes here, tubular secretion, no, tubular reabsorption, there we go. Tubular reabsorption is going to be occurring in the nephron loop to make sure, hey, hold on, I don't want to get rid of everything from the blood, I want to keep some of it. That's what's going to be happening in the nephron loop. Like, hey, tubular reabsorption, I want to reabsorb some of the stuff that I filtered out back into the body, right? So here's the nephron loop, and it's going to be passing, like I said, through the renal medulla, and then it's going to go back into the renal cortex as it passes through the distal tubule, and then a bunch of distal tubules are going to be kind of funneled into the collecting duct. And the collecting duct is where the official term, the urine, is going to be pushed out. Okay, so the collecting duct is going to be, a bunch of collecting ducts are going to be put together to form the minor calyx, and then a major calyx, and then it's going to be into the renal pelvis, then into the ureter, and then out through the rest of the urinary system so it can get eliminated, right? And the whole time, this blood vessel is following this, the nephron, okay, so that, when the kidneys decide, hey, I want to keep or I want to reabsorb some of the stuff that's in the filtrate, it can be put right back into the blood. And that arteriole on the way out is called the efferent arteriole. All right. So here's four of the processes, or three of the four processes that happen within the nephron. And here's another picture getting into more detail what's kept and what's not kept as filtrate passes through the nephron. So this is a little different orientation than our diagram that we just filled out. But still, same thing. The first process here that we're going to be talking about is glomerular filtration. It filters out fluids from the blood through blood pressure. So it literally kind of like squeezes it out, kind of like wringing out a towel a little bit, like wringing out the fluid from a towel. I know it's kind of not a great picture when we're talking about blood, but still. But here's the thing about glomerular filtration. It filters out stuff that your body actually wants to keep, right? So blood pressure is just kind of forcing this stuff out into this ball of yarn of blood vessels, this afferent arteriole, but it kind of gets rid of more than what the body wants to. So two things happen in the body in the nephron rather, in order to keep some of the stuff that we want, right? And those two are tubular reabsorption and tubular secretion. Those two processes take place in order to retain what the body requires. So it doesn't want to get rid of all of its water. It doesn't want to get rid of all of its electrolytes, which are going to be, solutes that affect osmosis. It wants to keep some glucose, and it wants to keep some other substances like amino acids and that kind of stuff, right? So stuff that your body wants to keep is going to be reabsorbed, and it's going to be secreted. And we're going to look at that here in a second. But here's the nephron again. Glomerular filtrate is coming through. Some of the stuff is reabsorbed. Here's the descending loop of Henle, also known as the nephron loop. Water is going to be reabsorbed there. Salt is going to be reabsorbed there. Um, yeah, and then here's the collecting duct, and this is where secretion is going to be occurring as well. All right. So like I said, there's 4 different steps to urine formation, and we've talked about 3 of them already: glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, tubular secretion, and of course excretion, meaning elimination. Hey, here's a super simple picture of the nephron and its relationship to blood and these 4 different processes of a urine formation. Okay, what we filter out plus what we secrete minus what we reabsorb, that's what we get from the urine. Okay, and this diagram here is really nice. Once again, here's the afferent arteriole, here's the glomerulus. Okay, filtrate is going to be produced from, well, filtration. Okay, Bowman's capsule is also known as the glomerular capsule. Reabsorption is going to occur to keep what the body wants. Secretion is going to be an extra step that, like, hey, actually put this in the urine too before it exits out. And then 4 is urinary excretion, meaning that, like, get rid of this. All right, and blood goes on its merry way. It's been filtered out, and it's been we got rid of what we needed to get rid of. Okay, so those are the 4 steps of urine formation. Okay. Couple other notes here. The kidneys use active and passive transport to control what goes into urine and what does not. So again, if you've learned this from a previous class, if you've definitely learned about this in AP biology, if you've learned this in another biology class, great. Active transport is the cell using ATP to actively try to push substances out or into a cell. And passive transport is the kind of the natural motion of substances from one side of a membrane to another, kind of like what we looked at in our last video with osmosis. Osmosis is a type of passive transport. Okay, so concentrations, meaning the relative amount per volume of ions like sodium and potassium, as well as things like glucose, urea, and uric acid, and water, they change between glomerular filtrate and the urine. So what is filtered out from the glomerular capsule and the glomerulus is actually different in composition than actually what comes out of your pee, right? Because some extra stuff is thrown in through secretion, and some stuff is kept in the body through tubular reabsorption, right? So it's not like we want to get rid of everything that the glomerulus filters out. Okay, so while that's happening, right, while those 4 processes are happening to form urine is kind of funneled and funneled and funneled and funneled and funneled, right? So as we looked at before, a bunch of distal tubules, right, all kind of collect into what we call a collecting duct. And a collecting duct, a whole bunch of those tubes, like kind of combine into a minor calyx. And then a minor calyx, they kind of combine into a major calyx. And all the major calyxes combine into the renal pelvis. And that's when it finally exits the kidney, right? So it's kind of like just a big series of funnels. So like I said, urine from collecting duct is funneled into the calyces, so the minor and major calyx, and then into the renal pelvis and out the ureters into the bladder and urethra. So I kind of drew some arrows here, kind of showing this process. Here's the individual nephrons. Okay, the distal tubules of those nephrons collect into funnel into the collecting ducts. Then the collecting ducts funnel into the minor calyx, and then the minor calyces filter into the renal pelvis, and then out the renal pelvis through the ureters into the bladder, then out the urethra. Okay, so it's kind of just a bunch of series of funnels once it goes through that nephron. Once that blood is filtered out, what's taken back or what's needed is reabsorbed, and there's a little extra that's put into the urine from secretion, and this last step is excretion, meaning getting rid of that urine. So yeah, here's a diagram showing the path urine takes through the urinary system, and I've kind of outlined the four main processes of urine formation as filtrate passes through. Right. So here's the glomerulus. Blood is, glomerular filtrate is formed from blood pressure in the blood. It's collected in the glomerular capsule. Then that filtrate passes through these 3 structures within the nephron: the proximal tubule, the nephron loop, and the distal tubule, while stuff that we want or the body wants is reabsorbed. We don't want to filter out all of it. Then some extra steps in secretion in order to add some more stuff into the urine that is not necessarily filtered, but we want to add it back to the urine anyway. That's secretion that happens in the collecting duct. Okay, and then excretion is the series of funnels that's going to collect urine, more and more and more urine until it's excreted out. So the calyx within the kidney, the renal pelvis, kind of funnels into the ureter. The ureter is going to be a tube that carries urine all the way to the urinary bladder. The bladder stores it for a little bit, and then it uses smooth muscle in order to excrete it out through the urethra. And that's going number 1. All right? So the control of urine volume and composition, we're going to talk about how is what's in your urine regulated. We're going to talk about one main hormone here, and that is ADH, also known as antidiuretic hormone. So when the body needs to retain water, ADH is produced by the diencephalon. It's a part of your brain. Remember that? It's produced particularly by the hypothalamus, and it's released by the posterior pituitary gland. So I assume at this point in the year we've also talked about the parts of the brain, and that's coming back here. So ADH, its job is to make sure that water is reabsorbed in the distal tubules of the nephrons. Right? So I'm drinking a bunch of coffee here. Coffee has a lot of water in it, and obviously coffee has caffeine in it. And caffeine, actually what it does, it stimulates, it reduces the amount of ADH that your body is going to be releasing, that your hypothalamus is going to be releasing. So not only am I drinking a bunch of water here, I'm also telling my body to, well, not keep as much water. So what am I going to have to do once I finish this gigantic thing of coffee? I'm going to have to pee big time. I've actually, I don't know, that's how it works. You drink a lot of coffee, you have to pee a lot. ADH, it stimulates reabsorption. It increases the amount of water that your body wants to keep. Caffeine is going to stop ADH from being released, which means I'm going to be getting rid of a lot more water. Okay? So ADH and the kidneys themselves, what they're going to be doing is they're controlling how much water and how much solute is going to be in your urine. So like how clear or how yellow is your pee going to be. If there's too little water in your bodily fluids, osmotic pressure increases, meaning that like the pressure of water passing between cells is going to increase. ADH is going to be released. Distal tubules are going to increase water absorption, and your urine is going to be yellower and more concentrated, or even like more amber color if you're really dehydrated. It's going to be trying to keep as much water in your body as possible. So it's going to be trying not to eliminate a lot of that water. So your urine is going to be very concentrated. And then if there's too much water in your bodily fluid, your osmotic pressure decreases. If your body's not going to be releasing as much ADH, your distal tubules are going to decrease water reabsorption, and your pee is going to be clearer, right? It's going to be getting rid of more water as a result. Okay, so the concentration of your pee can kind of tell you a lot about your bodily fluids at that time. Okay, so urine funneled from the renal pelvis goes into the ureters. We're finally getting out of the kidneys here. We're funneling it into these honestly muscular tubes that are going to be sending urine to the urinary bladder, and they extend down to the pelvic cavity. Smooth muscle, these tubes are lined with smooth muscle similar to the tubes in your digestive system. It's going to be moving that pee down through peristalsis, which we have talked about in the digestive system unit. There's kind of wave-like motion of muscle, kind of like squeezing a tube of toothpaste. Your ureters are going to be squeezing the urine back down into the bladder so that it can be stored and then eliminated. Okay? Ureters deposit urine into the urinary bladder, which is a hollow muscular organ in the pelvic cavity. We are all familiar. We've all held our pee before for perhaps too long. It's not a good thing for you. And you felt that discomfort from the distension of the urinary bladder, right? So it's kind of stretchable, and it's very muscular, right? So it can expand a little bit as a result of having a lot of pee in it. It's muscular. It has inner and outer walls, and it can distend and stretch. And it's going to store that urine until it's eliminated. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm not going to put any super detailed pictures here because you get the idea. So I just put a toilet there. Urine is going to leave the body from the bladder through the urethra. The urethra is the final tube that it's going to that micturition is going to occur through. Right. So through the bladder is connected to the urethra. There's a sphincter that opens up when you decide, hey, it's time to go number one, and fluid or urine from the bladder is going to be expelled through the urethra. And that is a tube lined with mucus and, once again, smooth muscle in order to try to push that urine where it needs to go. And the last thing here, the micturition reflex relaxes the sphincters to allow the release of urine. So it's a reflex, right? It's going to take some voluntary action in order to try and control. Like, hey, I can't pee yet. I'm going to hold it in. But when physiology takes over, there's a reflex that occurs that opens up the sphincter within the bladder and leading to the urethra, and it's going to release that urine. All right, that is it for the urinary system. Please let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you next time.